Prepare for warp speed as we embark on a voyage through the vast expanse of science fiction in movies and television series. From distant planets to alien civilizations, we delve into the heart of the unknown, unraveling the tales that have captured audiences for generations. Get ready to unlock the secrets of the universe on Code Flicks. Hello and welcome to Code Flicks, the podcast where we take a deep dive into your favorite sci-fi and fantasy TV shows and movies. I'm Andre Bonner, and in today's episode, we'll be unleashing the dark forces of 1997 movie Spawn. I remember this movie as being one of the first to feature an anti-hero who was literally from hell. This paradigm is something new that I would have been exposed to at the time because I was so used to all of the hero dynamics, and this was something that was totally out of left field. Spawn is a 1997 American superhero film based on the Image Comics character of the same name, directed by Mark A.Z. Dipp. The film stars Michael J. White in the title role alongside John Leguizamo, Martin Sheen, Teresa Randall, D.B. Sweeney, Miko Hughes, and Nicole Williamson in the final film role. The film depicts the original story of the title character, a murdered U.S. Marine who is resurrected as the reluctant leader of Hell's Army. Spawn is one of the first films to feature an African-American actor portraying a major book superhero. And I remember at the time when I was watching it, I was, filled with a lot of pride as a black man, a black boy at the time, watching and admiring someone of my own race. Alright, let's look at the plot. U.S. Marine Corps Force Recon Lieutenant Colonel and CIA operative Al Simmons is assigned by his superior Jason Wynn to infiltrate a biochemical weapons plant in North Korea. Despite Simmons' growing moral qualms with the nature of his work, unknown to Simmons, Wynn had ordered his top assassin, Jessica Priest, to murder him while he was on the mission. Before Simmons dies, he is set on fire by Wynn, and the flames cause the plant to explode. Simmons arrives in Hell, where one of the rulers of Hell, Malboria, offers him a Faustian deal. If Simmons becomes his eternal servant and leader of his army in Armageddon, he will be able to return to Earth to see his wife, Wanda Blake. Simmons accepts the offer and returns to Earth. Upon his return as Spawn, he learns that 5 years has passed since his death. Wanda is now married to his best friend, Terry Fitzgerald, who is living as a stepfather to his daughter Sion. Spawn encounters a clown-like demon named Violator, sent by Malbogia, who acts as his guide down the path to evil. Spawn also meets and befriends a young homeless boy named Zack and a mysterious old man, Cogliastro, a fellow Hellspawn who has successfully freed his soul and now fights for heaven. Spawn learns that Wynn is now a weapons dealer and has developed a biological weapon called Heat-16. During a reception, Spawn attacks Wynn, kills Jessica, and escapes with the help of his necroplasm armor. Following the attack by Spawn, Violator convinces Wynn to have a device attached to his heart that will release Heat-16 worldwide if his vital signs flatline as a deterrent against assassination attempts. Malbogia wants Simmons to kill Wynn and initiate the apocalypse. Spawn confronts Violator, who turns into his demonic form and beats him down. Cogliastro rescues him and teaches him how to use his necroplasm armor with Zack. Spawn learns that Violator and Wynn are going to kill Terry, Cyan, and Wanda. Terry sends an email incriminating Wynn to a fellow newsman. Just as the email is sent, Cyan and Wynn enter the room. Cyan destroys Terry's computer and takes the family hostage. Spawn, Cogliastro, and Zack arrive and nearly kill Wynn, but Spawn extracts the device from Wynn's body instead and destroys it. With his plan foiled, Violator sends Spawn and Cogliastro to Hell, where they both battle the demon before subduing him. Spawn is then confronted by Malbogia and tells the demon that he will never lead Hell's army. Spawn escapes with Cogliastro just before they are overwhelmed by Malbogia's forces. Violator, having recovered, follows them. A final battle ensues, ending with Spawn decapitating the demon with his chains. Violator's head taunts the group and threatens his return before melting and returning to Hell. Wynn is arrested, and Spawn, realizing that this is no place for him in Wanda's world anymore, dedicates himself to justice rather than succumbing to his lust for vengeance and returns to the streets with Cogliastro and Zack. I like the fact that Spawn or Al Simmons would have taken up the deal initially, and that, speaks to the fact that many persons in a similar position putting pressures or, stresses of certain situations would choose to do or take a deal that might seem very unfair, and, they would have had a change of heart because they would have thought about certain things, or they would have seen things moving in a particular direction. It doesn't always happen that way, but at least it shows that dynamic. Another particular symbol I would have taken would be from the bad guy, Wynn. He would have had all of this power and respect and command from others, and in using that, he would have put himself in a particular situation where it didn't really work out for him. It meant that others would have to look at him as being more or less a target. And so that's why he would have set up himself in such a way to have his vitals being attached to the release of the Heat 16. So it was like the value of his life was based on more person's life, or it was more of trying to keep his life because he wanted to put more value on his life by taking on the value of others. And yet another symbol would come in the form of Al Simmons as Spawn becoming less of what he was meant to be. So, because even though Malbogia would have wanted him to be a part of his army or be leading his army, he decided that this wouldn't be what would define him. He recognized this after some counseling and getting to see how he has impacted the world, impacted the lives of the persons around him. And to that extent, I think that's what Cogliastro and Zack represents to Spawn, that they were the crux that needed to be there in order to push Al Simmons, push Spawn in that direction that needed to make him go. This is the path that I need to take. This is what I need to do now with what I have of my life, or the life that I've been given. So as mentioned before, Spawn, the movie, was based on a comic, and there are several differences that are key from the comic. Terry Fitzgerald, Al Simmons' best friend before his death, is black in the comics. In the film, he is white, portrayed by D.B. Sweeney. Todd McFarlane explained that this change was made by the studio to avoid having too many black leads, as they believe this would give a false impression that film's target audiences was the African American demographic. Now, I have to say something before I continue. This is something that I have seen in a lot of the movie industry, even up to this day and age that we're in, that white is basically better or more suitable in most circumstances, and white is what drives everything in Hollywood. Um, it's difficult to have that change because it's a system that has been set up by all white men who continue to push that narrative of trying to say that if it ain't white, it's not going to go anywhere. So, in the comics, as I said before, Al Simmons' murderer is Chapel, a character recreated by Rob Liefeld for the comic Youngblood. Jessica Priest is a character created for the film and took Chapel's place in the movie. The comic book storyline was later retconned so that the original character Jessica Priest would take his place, while Al's killer was Jason Wynn. Chapel's involvement was totally forgotten. Now let's look at the production. Columbia Pictures showed interest in making a film adaptation of Spawn when the comic book was launched in 1992. Negotiations fell through as Todd McFarlane felt that the studio was not giving him enough creative control. He eventually sold the film rights to New Line Cinema for $1 in exchange for creative input and merchandising rights. New Line president Michael DeLuca, a comic book collector himself, expressed interest in having a character that had an established as audience as Spawn, while declaring that success hinged on an adaptation that maintains a PG-13 rating but retains its darkness. As visual effects were an important production concern, the film was to be produced by Pull Down Your Pants Pictures, a company formed by former industrial light and magic artists Mark A. Z. Dipp, Clint Goldman, and Steve Spaz Williams. Dipp was slated to direct the film, with Goldman as producer and Williams as second unit director and visual effects supervisor. Dipp and Williams, who at the time were the only one of the three still attached to ILM, called the film opportunity or ticket out of the company. The script would be written by Alan B. McElroy, who, along with writing the Spawn comic book, also wrote many episodes of the Todd McFarlane Spawn animated series. And of course, that's something I've realized with a lot of these films from those times. ILM was the name because they did a lot of special effects and visual effects, and they were at the cutting edge of even CGI at the time. Now, Michael J. White found Al Simmons' character appealing. He described Spawn as the most tragic character I've encountered in any cinematic production. He says it was a challenge to make audiences sympathize with a government assassin who comes back from hell. That's so true. White had to endure 2 to 4 hours of makeup work, including a full glued-on bodysuit, yellow contact lenses that irritated his eyes, and a mask that restricted his breathing. He said that his long-time experience with martial arts helped him to endure the uncomfortable prosthetics, giving him strong will and unbreakable concentration. The makeup for John Leguizamo as Clown took 8 hours to apply at first, but then later got the process down to about 4 hours. It left him with blisters and calluses on his face and neck. Leguizamo found the heavy prosthetics of his costume for the clown to be claustrophobic, and the costume lacked any kind of cooling system, so he would sweat excessively. He compared the situation to wearing a full-body condom. Okay. Spawn was originally greenlit with a budget of $20 million. The scale of the visual effects led New Line Cinema to continually increase the project's budget, which grew 40 to 45 million, a third of which was spent on the effects. The shooting schedule was only 63 days. To cut production time by a week, Goldman lent $1 million to engage John Grower to use hell scenes. The visual effects shot count increased from 77 to over 400, created by 22 companies in the United States, Canada, and Japan, requiring 70 people and nearly 11 months to complete. Industrial Light and Magic (ILM) did most of the work, creating 85 shots at a cost of $8.5 million. More than half of the final effects shots were delivered 2 weeks before the film's debut. Wow. The most difficult sequences to render in the film included the Violator, Spawn's digital cape, and some of Spawn's transformations. I can see why. Visual effects supervisor Spaz Williams, with his previous experience of creating the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, was responsible for realizing the reptilian Violator. Working with KNB EFX Group over several months, they created a small 24-inch reference model, as well as a full-size 11-foot model for use in some of the practical shots. The small model was cut up and laser scanned. The data was then used by a team at ILM to create a digital armature of the creature, and to paint and give texture to the digital model. Only then could the character be animated, after which the work had to be converted to regular film stock. Further work was needed to integrate the footage with the rest of the scene, such as matching the lighting and grain of the other footage. The final shot of the Violator was delivered on July 21st, 1997. A team at ILM, supervised by Christopher Herr and Habib Zagapur, modeled, animated, and rendered realistic-looking ropes, glass elements, and a computer-generated Spawn. Originally intended as one long shot, the scene was later recut and extended. Critical reception at the box office. Spawn was released on August 1, 1997. It grossed over $9 million that opening weekend, ranking it second behind Air Force One. For its second weekend, the film dropped to number 3 in the box office, reflecting a decrease in earnings of 54.7% and a gross of over $8 million. The film grossed 54.9 million in the United States and Canada, and 32.9 million internationally, grossing 87.9 million worldwide against a production budget between 40 to 45 million. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 17% based on 47 reviews, with an average of rating of 3.9 out of 10. The website's critical census states that Spawn is an overbearing, over-violent film that adds little to the comic book adaptation genre. On Metacritic, it has a weighted average score of 34 out of 100 based on 17 critics, indicating generally unfavorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of C plus, or on a A plus to F scale. One of the few positive reviews was from Rob Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times, who awarded the film 3.5 out of 4 stars. He wrote the film's plot was sappy and little more than a setup for some of the most innovative effects of the era, so much that Spawn verged on surrealistic art film. Ebert ended his review with, "As a visual experience, Spawn is unforgettable." Gene Siskel is at the movie's co-host disagreed and said the film lost a mere 2 minutes after its introduction. Ebert praised the hellscape imagery and accused Siskel of being dismissive because of the genre, but having liked Batman, Siskel was unconvinced. David Kaplan of Newsweek called the film the summer's most spectacular concoction of visual effects and color, but said that those unfamiliar with the comics might find the story difficult to follow. Yeah, so I would add that with those more than anything else at the time when I enjoyed it, I would have enjoyed it for, yes, the aesthetics. Yes, it looked really nice. The imagery, it was at the time beyond what most other films of its kind was delivering, including the elements that I mentioned about the anti-hero and having a African American as the lead. And so, for me, I wouldn't necessarily be overly critical of those elements, such as the storyline or the comics itself, because I would not have read the comics either. So that would be something that would have to be weighed. Michael J. White is not a fan of the film. There is no footage of me ever saying that I like Spawn. That's Michael J. White. Right? He says that he thought that it was a good movie. That's all. John Leguizamo commented on the film, "The thing that Todd McFarlane brought to the comic book industry, which he saved in the early 1990s, was the edge, the darkness, the vulgarity, the violence. I think the movie would have profited more violence, more vulgarity, and being darker. Let it be truer to the comics." So I would have said before that I really enjoyed the idea of having a anti-hero, and something that I have learned since watching that when I was younger. These stories are surrounding having some moral quandary. The fact that Al Simmons would be able to transform himself, not just physically, but also mentally, to understanding certain things. Because in his life, he would have been a assassin for hire, basically. And he would now be become a tool for justice through understanding what his role is and understanding how we can change his destiny. One of the things that I really would have loved to see if there was to be and I think I've seen them say that there might be some future spin offs or probably a prequel or some additional movie. If you're to make that, you're gonna have to be very careful. Whoever makes it will have to be very careful to stay in a particular zone of the original. Maybe you can add little flourishes here and there, but don't go overboard. Put some elements, especially where it concerns the family of Alcimans. So perhaps we can see Cyan all grown up, fighting alongside her father, in some way, or have it, done in a particular way. What I do not want to see is a particular situation where something like Blade, we have movies upon movies, and then it starts to get, kind of Clyden. It loses its thrill. It becomes a little bit too predictive. So that's what I would say. Yeah, and feel free to share in the comments about your favorite Spawn moments, or if you have any theories to add to what I have said. Let me know what your reception was in watching the film. If you have watched it, and if you haven't watched it, why are you not watching it and listening to me? All right. Even though I've told you a lot about the plot, there's still a lot you can still go and watch on your own. And you can probably pick up a lot more. So, in this episode, we spoke about the Spawn movie. We spoke about the plot around what happened to Al Simmons and how he has been transformed by his circumstance. We looked at and touched on several themes and symbols that I think are integral to this movie. We also got to look at the production from the side of understanding what was going on, what was being done in the background and behind the scenes. And we also looked at the different receptions, whether they were overly critical or they were just people blustering about nothing much. And of course, this will continue to be the case for most movies, anyways. Right now, I just want to encourage you to subscribe and to follow the podcast. I will be releasing these as every Wednesday. I'm hoping to lock it down to a particular time on Wednesday, but it will be out every Wednesday. I'd also like to thank you for joining and tuning in and listening. You made me very, very happy to be able to do this. It is a great pride of mine to have a podcast like this and to be able to share my ideas and my thoughts with you. See you next time.